In this video, I'll introduce you to lists in Python. A list is a collection of objects, so the objects can be a set of integers like the prime numbers here, and you initialize a list by just giving the variable name is equal to and putting whatever you want in the list inside brackets separated by commas. So when you make the list of primes and print it out, that's what it is. But it doesn't have to be integers. You can have pretty much any object in a list. You can have strings, Boolean, which is logical true or false, or you can have a mix in a list. String, integer, Boolean, all mixed up. Although there are other structures that might be more appropriate to create a list with multiple different types of objects. We'll talk about dictionaries later. You can even have a list of lists. So here are some coordinate pairs. The first coordinate is 0, 0, the second one's 2, 4, and so forth. So this is a list that contains other lists. And sometimes you want to initialize a list just to be empty for now. Maybe your program will run through and populate the list later by appending items to the end of the list. There are other ways to create lists, and one way is to use the list function, and inside the list function you just put something that can be essentially looped over. It's called an iterable. The string can be looped over, and the first time around the list function will put the element A in your list, and then B and C and so forth. Likewise, the range function returns an iterable object that has the numbers, the integers 0 through 5. And you can turn that into a list if there's, for some reason, you need a list like that. A couple basic operations you can do is one of them is you can add two lists together, which will concatenate two lists. So it takes, I should point to this one. You can add two strings together. The analogy is, just like this example up here, is that you can add two strings together to create a longer string. This one concatenates A, B, C, D, E, F. And you can also use the plus to create a new list that concatenates the other two lists together. So in this example, I created a list of days of the week and just have Sunday through Saturday. And you'll notice that lists and strings have a lot of things in common. You can deal with them in many cases the same way. So you can access a certain element or item of a list by using its index. So day 2, this is index 0, 1, 2, this is index 2. So if I print day 2, it should be Tuesday, and that's what it is. You can create a slice, and this will reference the days list and pull out elements with index 1 through 5. So you can get the weekdays, pull out the last item from a list, the last two items from a list, and so forth. The last thing would give an error. So let me run it and see what this error is. You probably can tell what the error is right now, that there is no index 54. So this says the error on line 9 is that the list index is out of range. So we have to figure out ways to guard against that and not have your program crash. So there are ways to check whether an item's in a list or whether, and we'll talk about that next. Before we do, I'll show you how to find a particular element in a list and see what index it is. So back to our days of the week, if we want to find the string Tuesday, 2, then you can use the index method for a list. So you can say days.index, and this will look for Tuesday, and it'll return the index. So it should return 0, 1, 2, and yes, index was 2 for Tuesday. So if you try to search for something that isn't in the list, let's see what happens here. You will get an error. And the index method would return an error. Now this is a little different than a string, because a string you have two methods. One is index, but the other method, string method, you have is find. And there is no find like that for lists. So we have to now look for other ways to check before we try to search for something in a list. So here I'm going to look now see if Wednesday is in the list. So we'll just see if string to find, which is Wednesday, wed, see if that's in days, which means is Wednesday in the list of days. So this right here, if the string to find is in there, will return true. So that's what's happening here. It actually prints true. So yay, the string is in. If we change this to, let's do our other example of bad and run it again. Now bad is not going to be in days, so it'll give false. So this gives you one way to check if something's in a list before you try to use the index method. You just say, well, if the string defined is in the days list, then go ahead and do what you wanted to do. Otherwise, do something else. So in this case, since it wasn't in there, it printed out the string bad is not in the list of days. Let's go back to something that is in the list of days. And so Saturday is in the days list. That's true. So in this case, since Saturday's in the day list, it just prints the string, the index, and the index is 6, which is right. It's the last day of the week in this list. This is a common way of doing in this, and you'll be doing this a lot in this course. You'll check to see if the string is in there, because if you need to find its index, then this is a safe way to do it. This is actually called look before you leap, because you're actually being careful and you're looking ahead before you dive right in. There is another way to do it, which is you might see, and I'll introduce it to you, although I don't expect you to do it in this class. And this way is kind of the opposite. Instead of checking to see if it's okay before you try anything, this is actually just try it and see if something happens, see if it works. If it doesn't work and something goes wrong, this little construct here will check the error, and when it does find the value error, then it will do something else. So this is kind of like just go ahead and doing it and asking for forgiveness rather than permission. So again, this is a fancy try except clause here. It tries it, and if everything works fine, it just keeps on going and it kind of skips this part. But if it doesn't work, then it'll look up which type of error it is and do the right thing for that error. Now, although lists and strings kind of work similarly, there is an important difference. Lists are what's called mutable, which means you can change particular values in a list. Let's say you want to change the item at index 6, and instead of just saying sat, it'll say Saturday. Let's run it and see what this looks like. This one, you just say, I want the element at index 6 to now be Saturday. And there it is. We actually changed the list. You can't do this for strings. If let's say, find a typo and I want to just change, let's say change the letter at index 1, you can access it, but then let's say you try to change it. So we want to change this to be an I. Let's see what happens here. No, a string object doesn't support item assignment. So if you wanted to do this, you'd have to do a couple extra steps to actually make a new copy of the string with the correct letter in the right spot and store that back into name.